while also reminding voters if any member violated the selection process bylaws, action will be taken. Dun, dun, dun. Fallout continues, bro. Do you think the effects of, or do you think this affects the Patriots dynasty?
Well, look, I still believe the Patriots are the greatest dynasty ever.
Perfect.
I know you did your list. I consider the Patriots from 2001 to 2018 one dynasty. Like I consider the San Antonio Spurs that. So I think, to win 6 Super Bowls, which is more than every franchise except the Steelers who have 6, and then to get to 9, which is more than any franchise period has ever been to, I think that's the best dynasty ever. So, and I'm one that was not up in arms about Belichick not getting in because of the Spygate. That said, I do think it has to affect the dynasty a little in that I'm sure that there are players today who are young who didn't even know about Spygate. And even young fans who weren't aware of it, maybe it was fuzzy in their mind or something like that.
Sure.
This is just drumming it all up.
The co-host of my podcast, DeMonze.
Okay, right.
He's 27.
And he didn't even know.
He had heard, the only real discussion he'd ever heard or been involved in Spygate was today on the pod.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was fresh for him.
So now there are people like, wait, Belichick cheated? Brady? Some of Brady's champ. And I'm not belittling because I said they're the best dynasty ever, but now it just puts in some people's mind some doubt that may not have been there or a mental asterisk that wasn't there before. And it brings all this stuff that had kind of been forgotten or certainly, pushed under the carpet. Now it's back to the forefront. And so in that regard, I think it does diminish it a little bit, but I still think it's the best dynasty ever.
No, it doesn't diminish the dynasty. And I can speak from a player's perspective. And you spoke to Willie Colon yesterday, talking about his experience with losing against the Belichick team 3-3. Most players are going to look at that and say, man, y'all had a chance. Almost 100% of players are not going to look at it that way and not say, man, they only got that because they cheated. They got that because they had a little advantage. We don't see it that way. Mm-hmm. As competitors, you still have to line up and execute. I still feel like I'm better than you. And so when you look at what they were able to do, not once, not twice, not 3 times, 6 times, and the longevity, the sustainability of it, I'm sorry, you can never take that away. When you talked about kids not knowing, you think when they look up Bill Belichick in the history books, there's going to have Spygate next to it? No.
No, but I'm saying this has brought it up.
I understand that. And
now they're looking it up.
And this will pass just like Spygate did.
It'll pass, but it doesn't change how I view it because I lived through it. You know what I mean? And him not being a first ballot Hall of Famer does not change how I view him because I would have voted him first ballot. I think he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think that, so here is the question I would ask you, and I don't even want to make it Chiefs. And this is a odd hypothetical, but walk me down the road.
I love this.
Let's go 18 years from right now.
Okay, 18 years from right now.
And 19 years into Drake May's career.
Yep.
And Vrabel's been there the whole time. It's the craziest thing ever. They have the exact same win-loss record as Brady Belichick.
Amazing.
They have 6 rings. They went to 9 Super Bowls. They have the exact same resume. And someone says,
what a dream we have, right?
And right, that's why I'm removing the Chiefs from it. And someone says, all right, who had the better dynasty?
Oh, it's like picking between my children.
Right.
I love them both equally.
I understand. But so
no, I get
what I'm saying is if someone ever does approach it, because I agree with you guys, I do look at it as 2 separate dynasties, but if you are saying it is one, it is unquestionably the greatest dynasty ever, no matter what. if someone ever matches it, this is where this applies.
Agree.
Don't,
I do agree with that.
and that's why I said the Patriots. Like, if Drake May and Vrabel get to 9 and win 6, and they have all the same accolades, and there's not a single scandal, not a single blemish, then they get the tie goes to them.
All right, but that's inherent to any debate of this nature. This is the universal challenge when engaging in these kinds of comparative discussions. I can use the Chiefs as a prime example to illustrate this very point. Let's envision a future where Patrick Mahomes secures 7 championship rings, correct? However, if every single one of those victories is achieved under the leadership of Andy Reid, the immediate retort would be, well, Tom Brady proved his greatness by succeeding with a completely different franchise. Conversely, if Mahomes were to also switch teams and capture a title elsewhere, mirroring Brady's path, the comparisons would become even more direct. We'd be attempting to meticulously chart an identical course to what Nick outlined with the Patriots, Drake May, and the Brady parallel. In that scenario, critics would inevitably pivot to other metrics. Yeah, but Mahomes suffered multiple blowout losses in the Super Bowl. Or, Mahomes has thrown more critical interceptions, or something along those lines. The underlying reality is this. Whenever you venture into making these monumental player-to-player or dynasty-to-dynasty comparisons, you will invariably find yourself scrutinizing specific, selective data points to support one perspective over the other. I want to be unequivocally clear on this next point. My intention is not to leverage these hypotheticals or observations to in any way diminish the phenomenal career and talent of Patrick Mahomes. That is not the objective here. However, if we find ourselves immersed in one of those classic sports debates, where it's essentially a tie, and the benefit of the doubt is awarded to the challenger, you would be compelled to acknowledge certain facts. You'd have to note that Tom Brady never suffered a postseason loss in a particular manner that Mahomes has, or you'd highlight the incontrovertible fact that Brady emerged victorious in his direct Super Bowl showdown against Mahomes. So, within the framework of this specific type of legacy argument, the Patriots case, and by extension Brady's, carries undeniable and substantial weight, even if we broaden the scope beyond New England. Let's refocus solely on the Chiefs for a moment. If they were to win 6 Super Bowls with the Mahomes-Reid partnership, and we then placed that dynasty side by side with the Brady-Belichick Patriots dynasty, the question of which dynasty was superior would instantly ignite a similarly fierce and qualification-laden debate. The conversation would immediately be flooded with references to Spygate, Deflategate, and a litany of other controversies. Yeah, but what about this scandal? What about that one? It becomes an inescapable part of the discourse. Now, I understand the essence of what Greg is articulating to a certain degree, but it intersects with what I frequently describe as a form of football brainwashing or sports brainwashing. It's that ingrained mentality where someone insists, we don't think about the game that way. We don't factor in those external elements. And my internal response is always, well, perhaps you should start thinking about it a little bit. What are you actually saying? If it's verified that an opposing team had unauthorized access to your strategic playbook, that confers a monumental, almost insurmountable competitive advantage. Do you not comprehend the thousands of hours of meticulous preparation, film study, and game planning that coaching staffs undertake each week? You absolutely should consider the impact of such a breach. So, while I grasp the sentiment Greg is expressing, this desire to view the sport in a pure, unadulterated vacuum, I also believe it stems from the same cognitive conditioning that could lead a dedicated high school football team to genuinely, fervently believe that given the opportunity, they could defeat a professional NFL squad. Just put us on the field. We could do it. And you know what? In their hearts, they believe it. This mindset is fundamentally wired into the competitive athlete's psyche, and it persists long after their playing days. I'll admit, I still catch myself doing it. I might look at a parked car and have this fleeting, irrational thought. I could lift that car and throw it over that house. Logically, I know it's impossible, but a part of me believes the feat is achievable because the athlete's core programming is built on overcoming limits. From the moment you first pick up a ball as a young child, the central dogma drilled into your consciousness is, you can accomplish anything if you just work hard enough. Just outwork everyone. Just put in the hours. Just grind. That perseverance is framed as the sole barrier between you and greatness. Of course, in reality, there's a complex tapestry of talent, opportunity, genetics, and circumstance at play. But the foundational message remains singular. Work harder. This mentality is instilled from the age of 3. Just put in the work. Just put in the work. It seems that Greg might still be operating with a residual echo of that pure, effort-based worldview. And that's fine. But it simplifies a very complex historical conversation. The entire subject of the cheating allegations, Spygate, and all the associated controversy is profoundly intriguing, particularly when you examine the institutional and cultural reaction to it. I think the objective reality we must confront is that the NFL governing body itself never treated these incidents with a severity that would mandate a fundamental rewriting of the history books. They did not strip the Patriots of a Lombardi trophy. Some of the proven violations were even temporally connected to their Super Bowl victory over the Philadelphia Eagles. Yet the league never took the step of officially vacating that title or declaring the Eagles the de facto champions. The Deflategate saga, for a significant portion of the public and media, transformed into a narrative about the league office unfairly targeting Tom Brady, rather than a clear-cut story of Brady's own malfeasance. Consequently, when we survey the landscape of professional sports legacies, Tom Brady's stature remains completely unblemished by these events. The same can be said for Bill Belichick throughout the entirety of their historic 2-decade run. Their reputations have not been tarnished in any meaningful, lasting way, certainly not in the manner we have witnessed with other athletes in different sports. The most apt comparisons I can draw come from Major League Baseball. Consider the legacy of Alex Rodriguez or Barry Bonds. Their achievements, however monumental, are perpetually viewed through the lens of performance-enhancing drug use. It's obviously a more direct parallel with substances like PEDs, but the principle of a lasting reputational cost is clear. Now, consider this within the NFL context. The New England Patriots actually did have a player suspended for violating the league's policy on performance-enhancing substances, and that same player later returned to be named the Super Bowl MVP. Yet this sequence of events did not trigger a sustained, ecosystem-wide reevaluation of the team's accomplishments in the way a similar scenario would have in baseball. The discussion simply didn't coalesce into a permanent stain on the Patriots dynasty within the collective NFL consciousness in a comparable fashion. It's treated differently. Let's extend this thought experiment to another sport. Imagine if it were revealed that one of LeBron James's pivotal teammates during his championship runs, I'm trying to think of a suitable example, perhaps Chris Bosh, with all due respect to his own great career, was found to have been using a banned substance throughout those title seasons. There is absolutely no question, zero doubt, that this information would be relentlessly used as a cudgel against LeBron James's own legacy. It would be woven into the narrative of his championships. He had help. He benefited from an unfair advantage. This is an undeniable reality of modern sports discourse. The fascinating thing about the Patriots saga is the trajectory of public sentiment. There was a prolonged period where they, Belichick and Brady, were the objects of intense anger and hatred from fans across the league. And then, seemingly at random, that pervasive animosity dissipated. It was as if a switch flipped and a consensus emerged where everyone simply began to universally adore Tom Brady. The holdouts who stubbornly refused to anoint him as the greatest of all time finally, and often reluctantly, capitulated after he won a 7th ring in Tampa Bay. Okay, fine. He's the GOAT. Even Belichick, once vilified as a cheater and mocked with the "he's nothing without Brady" mantra, has undergone a public rehabilitation. Now, as he embarks on a college coaching venture, complete with all the accompanying personal news cycles, and faces a delay in his Hall of Fame induction, the dominant public reaction is one of incredulous defense. This is insane! How is he not a first-ballot lock? This evolution in the court of public opinion is a deeply compelling sociological study in sports fandom. I grasp the point that Brew is making, echoed by Nick's podcast host, regarding generational perspectives. The argument is that younger fans, who weren't cognitively present or deeply invested during the peak of the Spygate controversy, simply don't assign the same weight or meaning to those events. They didn't live through the daily media barrage. Ironically, this observation actively reinforces my central argument. When those younger fans, prompted by discussions like this one, go and research Spygate, they are engaging with history through a modern, filtered lens. This process itself highlights how athletic legacies and the definition of a dynasty are not fixed in stone, but are fluid constructs, constantly being redefined and reevaluated through contemporary perspectives. Personally, I don't claim to possess an encyclopedic knowledge of the intricate details surrounding the San Francisco 49ers dynasty of the 80s and 90s or the Pittsburgh Steelers' reign in the 70s. I don't know all the internal controversies, the precise quality of competition across the league, the specific playoff controversies, or the nuances of every "was it a catch" debate from that era. I have no idea. And ultimately, that level of granular historical detail doesn't matter to me in forming a foundational view of those teams' greatness. It genuinely doesn't. If those stories are compelling enough to be turned into a riveting documentary or a dramatic film, perhaps because there was a juicy scandal or compelling human drama involved, then I'll happily watch it. That might be the extent of my deep dive. I might subsequently read the Wikipedia entry or watch a YouTube video explaining the differences between the cinematic version and historical fact. And then I'm satisfied. I'm not going to hunt down a 500-page investigative tome, cross-reference newspaper archives, and create a conspiracy board in my basement. That's just not my approach. I suspect that's the prevailing attitude for the vast majority of fans today. A more detached, curated consumption of sports history. This principle of transience applies with full force to the current era as well. Right now, the Kansas City Chiefs feel like an immortal entity in the NFL landscape. Patrick Mahomes seems larger than life, a force that will define the league for a generation. But that aura, that feeling of permanent dominance, is an illusion of the present moment. It will pass, it will fade, just as the invincible aura surrounding Tom Brady has passed, and just as the intimidating specter of Bill Belichick has faded. This is simply the immutable cycle of sports, and indeed, of life itself. We are all, athletes and fans alike, temporary participants in an ongoing story. None of this retrospective analysis or discussion of controversies changes my fundamental view of the Patriots dynasty and what they accomplished. The empirical evidence of their dominance is staggering and exists on a plane of its own. For the vast majority of the modern NFL era, spanning the last quarter century, they owned the league. The statistical proof is overwhelming. 33 playoff victories. Let that number sink in. 33. Against only 12 losses. To provide context, the Philadelphia Eagles sit in a distant second place with 19 playoff wins. The Kansas City Chiefs, the modern standard-bearer, have 18. The Seattle Seahawks have 16. The Pittsburgh Steelers 15. The gap is not narrow, it is a chasm. It is not even a remotely close comparison. Even if you were to hypothetically subtract a handful of those wins due to whatever speculative reason, perhaps attributing a couple to the Mac Jones season or other variables, and you arrive at a rounded figure of, say, 30 playoff wins, you are still looking at a historical ledger that screams sheer, unadulterated dominance. Absolute, top-to-bottom, decade-spanning dominance. It is a remarkable organizational achievement. Full stop. Now, if the intent is to proactively factor in the impact of cheating and scandal to qualitatively downgrade that dominance, one must then reconcile with the paradoxical reaction of the very institutions that govern the sport. The NFL itself, the entity with the most power to assign lasting blame and consequence, did not seem to care enough to take the most severe punitive actions available. The sports media ecosystem, while covering the scandals intensely for news cycles, did not sustain a permanent campaign of delegitimization. And perhaps most tellingly, the collective fan base of the NFL, after a period of vocal outrage, did not maintain a unified front of scorn. The anger crested, and then it receded, giving way to a broader appreciation, or at least acceptance, of the greatness they witnessed. Bill Belichick continued to be celebrated as a defensive and strategic genius. Tom Brady's every move was chronicled with reverence. The players who cycled through that roster faced no enduring stigma. They have not suffered the same kind of indelible, reputational consequence that we have seen afflict figures like Barry Bonds or Alex Rodriguez. When people discuss Bonds and the Hall of Fame, there is a palpable, permanent asterisk in the room. When A-Rod's name comes up in greatest ever conversations, the PEDUs is an inseparable part of the discussion. Greg mentioned the lack of an official asterisk, but in the court of public opinion for baseball, it certainly exists. Football, for a complex set of reasons tied to the nature of the sport, media evolution, and perhaps the specific infractions, simply does not treat its historical controversies with the same enduring gravity. Therefore, if we, as a contemporary audience, wish to initiate a project of re-examining the past and treating these football scandals with the same serious, legacy-altering scrutiny as baseball's steroid era, I am conceptually open to that exercise. It's a valid intellectual pursuit. However, it ceases to be a simple historical footnote and becomes a deliberate act of revisionism. It's almost akin to how we reevaluate cultural artifacts from the past. Consider comedy films from the 1980s or 1990s. Many are virtually guaranteed to age poorly. You revisit them and think, they would never make that joke today. I personally subscribe to a philosophy where, in comedy, everything should be on the table. But I also possess the critical faculty to recognize that a film was a product of its time, 1987, and I don't need to judge it solely through the hypersensitive lens of 2026. If we are choosing to apply that modern, magnified, and morally scrutinizing lens to the Patriots dynasty now, that is a wholly separate and distinct conversation from the one that was happening in real time. It is a different dialogue altogether. This is especially interesting to ponder because the media and social landscape for a potential scandal today is fundamentally, radically different from what it was in the early 2000s. Make no mistake, both the Patriots then and the Chiefs now are the objects of intense hatred from rival fan bases who eagerly await their downfall. But if a scandal of Spygate's magnitude, or a PED controversy involving a central figure like Travis Kelce, were to engulf the Kansas City Chiefs today, I am convinced the reputational cost and the narrative fallout would be orders of magnitude more severe. We now exist in a state of hyper-focus, perpetual connection, and information saturation that simply did not exist 2 decades ago. Any such allegation would spawn its own dedicated multi-part podcast series before the NFL's investigation was even complete. It would generate thousands of YouTube videos from analysts, commentators, and fans. It would dominate every sports talk show, not just as a segment, but as the sole topic for weeks. Colin Cowherd would dissect it on The Herd and then again in deeper detail on his personal podcast. Nick Wright would tackle it on First Things First and then launch a deep dive series on his own platform. I would be discussing it here. This layered, multi-platform, recursive amplification simply did not exist in 2003. There was no sprawling digital comment section beneath every article. There was no Twitter to serve as a real-time global outrage engine. The news cycle was slower, more centralized, and ultimately more fleeting. Consequently, if our collective project in 2026 is to revisit the Patriots' past through this modern, hyper-magnified, and permanently interconnected lens and declare, we must now push this legacy further down the list, then we must be painstakingly consistent. You cannot simply lower the standing of Bill Belichick while leaving Tom Brady's pedestal untouched. Brady was the central figure on those teams. He benefited from the same systemic environment, the same preparation, and the same competitive advantages, alleged or proven. Even if we isolate Deflategate as a distinct issue, the broader climate of suspicion surrounds the entire era. You cannot selectively apply revisionist scrutiny based on which individual you personally find more or less likable. Such an endeavor forces us into a much larger, more nuanced, and philosophically treacherous conversation where we must establish clear, consistent rules for how we judge historical eras across different sports and media landscapes. So, when posed with a seemingly straightforward question like, does this change how you view the dynasty? The answer is inherently complex. It is not simple. It initiates a cascading series of comparative moral and historical calculations. As Nick framed it, if we are to juxtapose the Patriots' 6 championships, accompanied by confirmed scandals, against Andy Reid's 3 championships, currently unaccompanied by such controversies, what is the definitive calculus? What is the exchange rate between rings and reputation? If we choose to engage in that intricate, fraught game of ethical and historical arbitration, where we weigh trophies against proven violations and public perception, then we had better be prepared for a long, convoluted, and ultimately subjective journey. We must buckle up for a debate with no clean answers. Those are my comprehensive thoughts on the matter. I am genuinely and deeply interested in hearing your perspectives. What is your take on the New England Patriots dynasty, the legacies of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, and what all of these controversies mean in today's context? How do you reconcile the undeniable statistical dominance with the confirmed breaches of rules? And most intriguingly, how does the fact that we are now analyzing these events through the radically different technological and social prism of 2026, compared to the media environment of 2006, shape our conclusions? Please, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I make it a point to read every single comment that comes through. Whether you find yourself in firm agreement with my points or in vehement opposition, I welcome the dialogue. Let's get into some detailed discussions. Let's have some passionate but respectful debates. But ultimately, let's remember to have some fun with this exploration of sports history. If you enjoy this kind of in-depth analytical content, please consider subscribing to the channel. We are diligently building an amazing, thoughtful community here, and I would absolutely love to see you become a part of it. My goal is to build a digital space where we all feel intellectually connected and excited to engage with the nuances of the game. I believe we are well on our way to achieving that. Also, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. That simple action genuinely helps with the visibility of the content and supports the channel's growth within the platform's algorithm. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I'll see you in the next video.